I'm here with Rainer Stropek from Software Architects. He's the CEO and co-founder, and also a developer, I understand. And we had an ISV executive board a few weeks ago in Dublin, and I asked Rainer to come and speak with us about building software as a service applications, because he's built a very nice one that works on our platform, and we think has got some really great ideas in it. It's a great product. And so we asked him to come and speak with us about what it was like to build that application, because it was a different kind of application, it was a different kind of experience, particularly because he had to think about building something that was multi-tenant, which is a powerful idea for cloud computing, but it's also something that's slightly complicated and requires us to think about things maybe that we haven't seen before. So I asked Rainer to come and talk to us today, give us a little bit about his view on multi-tenancy and his experience, and perhaps also help you understand a little bit more about what this concept means and what it will mean for cloud-based applications. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Chris.
Great. So tell us a little bit about multi-tenancy and your experience.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me speak about this topic that is really, really very important for us. We spent at least the last 3 years building our software as a service application that is called Time Cockpit, and multi-tenancy in combination with extensibility and cloud and things like that were one of the main drivers of innovations where we had to change our thinking a lot. Let me just quickly set up the goals that I want, the most important highlights that I want to tell you in this presentation. The first one, I would like to discuss with you why you should care, why we care about multi-tenancy in the context of software as a service. The next one is I want to clarify this topic of multi-tenancy a little bit. What is multi-tenancy? In fact, is there a kind of definition?
Right.
And the last one is how can we solve this problem? Some ideas, some things that work for us, some things that maybe didn't work for us, and some things that were hard to overcome.
Correct. So maybe tell us a little bit about what is the difference, or you can help us understand from the common models that we've had before about building, designing, and shipping software. What's changing?
Yeah, you know, my past is this kind of model. I have been, Time Cockpit is the fourth venture I did together with my colleague Karen Huber, and before we have built custom softwares. We have been this dev team on the left-hand side, and we always had one or the other big customer. They came to us, they had an individual problem, and we solved it for them. But of course we had the idea to make more of the time by just taking the software, looking for other similar customers and offering it to them. So we gave up this very close relationship and went to something like this. We still have this one customer, and then we go to the customer and say, you know what, we want to customize this stuff and give it to more customers, maybe a little bit smaller customers, but more of them. That was possible, but it's very hard to do that, because if you have this application and it was tailored specific to one customer and you want to give it out to multiple other customers, it's expensive. It's expensive for them, it's hard to decide, it's not something that is ready, they can take their hands on immediately. So it's not that easy. What we really wanted to go for is this model. This was our dream. We wanted to have a component of the shelf product that we design really not with one big customer in mind, but with a lot of customers in mind.
And you often have to get there from the large customer. I mean, most companies, most software companies, their idea is, let's have a product that we sell to many customers, and we gain our experience, and we learn, and we grow from 1, 2, 3 small sets of customers, and then growing out to this big model. But now the cloud is a completely different scale altogether, isn't it?
Well, we did it a little bit differently. For us, revolution worked. We tried an evolutionary run inside of our own company, but it was always hard to decide. You have this one big customer, and you're successful in developing custom solutions. And when it comes to building a component of the shelf solution, the development process for the component of the shelf solution is always lagging behind, because you have one big customer that wants something from you. So for us, we've sold our past company and we founded a new one, and we really said we don't want a big customer from the very beginning. We want to decide something for the big market. We want to catch the long tail. I think this slide, Chris Anderson, I think he's chief editor of the Wired magazine, he brings it to the point. He says, we have to lower the cost of providing the software down to catch the long tail. A lot of customers sitting out there outside and they want to use the software, but we have to make it possible for them. And for us, this revolutionary thing really worked. We sat down, we said, we stop our business for 1 or 2 years. We just sit down, we develop something that is capable of catching the long tail. So this is the business model of this.
I think it's very interesting to talk about the long tail as this non-addressable market. And I think we've struggled at a certain price point, a certain cost, to deliver interesting software to these companies. What is it that motivated you to go after this market segment?
Because we felt this passion that it should be possible now in the days of the internet, and especially with the availability of the cloud, to be able to offer something like this. Because previously, but let's go to the next slide. How can the cloud help? Because this is a key thing. In the past, if you wanted to catch the long tail, you had the problem that you had to have a lot of money, because you had to buy a lot of servers to be able to handle a lot of load, expected load. But in fact, if things wouldn't work out that well, you have a lot of servers, but at some point in time you don't need it. Because the real load drives the revenue and the resources drive the cost.
Right.
And with the cloud, things change. Things change because the available resources are variable. It grows for us like a natural skin. So we have seen the cloud as an enabler, and this is why we wanted to catch the long tail, because we saw an opportunity to build an application that can really handle 10,000, 100,000 of customers, and we don't have to do the upfront investment.
So there were two things I get that really motivated you. One, a passion for customers and for small companies and small groups, that they should be able to have great software to use and really interesting products. A lot of the technology and innovation that often is only left for large companies because they have to invest for these resources. So that's the first thing you get. The second thing is it really changes the pricing and the cost dynamic, because your cost can now be flexible. So instead of having this staircase resource plan and fixed costs, if you will, say in a typical data center hosting situation, now you can go to more this dynamic model.
Exactly.
But it introduces a lot of problems, right?
It does. It does. It doesn't come, you don't get it for free. It's easy. It's very easy to program, for instance, for Windows Azure. The Windows Azure SDK, I mean, if you are a professional developer, you spend a few days and you know all the API. It's not that complex. The complex thing is the architecture, because as always, it's simple to develop for a clustered environment, large environment. We know how to do that, but in the cloud, there is one point where your architecture has to be able to scale down. And this is completely new. In the past, we were able to scale up, to scale out, to add more servers, to add bigger servers, but an architecture that is able to remove a server at one time and to add it maybe 3 hours later because more users are on the system again, this is something that you have to develop for. And it requires a completely different architecture, a completely different skill set. We can take a look at
what is
this multi-tenancy thing. How does it relate to this cloud and software as a service?
Because I find when I talk to a lot of ISVs who are partners of Microsoft, or I want to be potential partners of Microsoft, I find that this word multi-tenancy gets used a lot, and I think it's kind of confusing. So maybe you can clear it up, straighten up what the different types are, and what really is multi-tenancy?
Absolutely. There is a publication written by guys from Microsoft. It was an IEEE publication, I think, originally, and they defined something that is called a software as a service maturity level. And if we take a look at these maturity levels, we have maturity level 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 is in fact a custom development model. 2 is a model where you have a component of shelf software that is running on-premise at the customer site. 3 is the first one that we could call something like software as a service, because you have this one big server and you are handling a limited number of tenants. Tenants are strictly separated, but they share a common environment, and therefore costs go down, of course. But the really nice thing, the sweet spot where Windows Azure also operates, is in the software as a service maturity level 4. You have a lot of tenants up front. You have some kind of logical or physical load balancer, and then you have a variable number of instances serving these tenants. If you get more tenants, you add additional service, you add additional instances. If you get less tenants, you remove these instances, and therefore costs and revenue follow the same path.
Right.
So let's go for the next slide, for instance. Cloud does not mean multi-tenancy by default, because you can use the cloud just like a common hosting environment. You can say, I have this tenant one, this customer one, I give him a virtual server here, I give him a database here, and if I get tenant two, I give him another server, another database. It's in the cloud, it's in my so-called subscription. So I am the customer for Microsoft, and the end customer is a customer of mine. But you can even go another way. You can say, you know, dear customer, get a subscription with Microsoft, and I install my software into your subscription. It's still in the cloud, but this is not the kind of multi-tenancy I'm talking about. Because imagine the following situation: tenant N, tenant 1 is currently not using the system, tenant N needs more resources, and tenant N cannot use the spare server up here. So this is not a cost-optimal solution for
Really,
the customer perspective.
we've changed the layout and the architecture,
Absolutely.
but we haven't really changed the fundamental of the application.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to look at. That's the difficult part.
That's hosting in the cloud. And what we want to go for is this kind of model. It's, you have a few number of customers, you have a small infrastructure in the cloud. If you get more customers, you get a bigger infrastructure in the cloud. If you get even more customers, you add another server and things like that. But if you lose customers, for instance, you can easily remove resources again and reduce costs immediately.
And that is that dynamic model we were talking about, where resources follow demand.
Exactly. And even if you have an existing customer that is using your system less, you can again remove the number of servers. Imagine a system that is only operating in Europe. No one is interested during the night. Why not reducing the number of servers during the night and offering a better performance during day? This is really multi-tenancy, and you have to build a system from the ground up to be able to handle such situations.
And this model is the one that really takes advantage of Azure's capability to scale up and down in terms of different components of the resources, and also take advantage of the pricing that way. Because if you do it in the old way, there's not much to gain. I mean, there's not really a lot of change in price or deployment because you haven't changed the model. So what does this mean?
Let's take a look at what this model means for us as ISVs and our investment. If we say we want to go for this variable cost model, we have two choices. We can either say, you know what, we do a quite simple implementation, so we only do the absolute minimum from what I've shown in the past. What this means is, for instance, do not always have the minimum resources and just add new resources immediately when we need it and remove it immediately again when we don't need it anymore. We have a very simple implementation, but this means we have high operational costs. If you go for a small number of big customers, that's fine. But if you want to catch the long tail, you need optimization in this area. So you need an automated process that is monitoring your multi-tenant infrastructure and changing it on the fly. And this means investment. And startups or even established companies have to make the strategic decision, not the technical decision. Where are we going to live? Are we in this area, low development costs but high operational costs, or do we want to catch the long tail? And then you have to be prepared to have some investment, because development costs, upfront development costs, will be quite high.
Right. Can you give us an example of this or show us what this looks like?
I can. For instance, this is a screenshot of an application performance management tool that we work very closely together. There is a company out there that is called CompuWare, and they have a product that is called Dynatrace, and we work together with them to make it available in the Windows Azure cloud, because Windows Azure typically involves web farms and database clusters, quite complex infrastructures. And such an application performance management suite gives you a very clear insight in what happens on your servers. Which ones are red, which ones are blue, where do you have problems, what is for instance, let's take a look at this one, where do you have peaks, do you catch your service level agreements? And in such a peak, if you have an automatic system that has a very high software as a service maturity level, then it should automatically add new instances in this point of time to get into the service level agreement again. And this is an important thing. You can do this one manually, high operational costs, but less development costs. Or you incorporate a system like Dynatrace, for instance, do some scripts and macros and PowerShell scripts and add servers if you need them. So the very fundamental message is optimization is in this area very sexy again, because a highly optimized system can save you a lot of money, and therefore you can offer your system at a lower price point, and you can catch a longer tail. That's the whole story.
Great.
So the really complexity, Chris, comes up when you have multi-tenancy combined with extensibility and customization. Because if you want to catch the long tail, you will have very small customers. Our smallest customers consist of one person, and our largest customers consist of a few hundred persons. But one size does not fit all. So you have to build a software that is multi-tenancy enabled and that is customizable.
Because people want to customize according to their own workflow, their
Exactly.
own work pattern, how they do things.
A lot of people forget that from a customer's perspective, it's not important if your software is multi-tenancy enabled. They see only their use case. They want to have a solution that fits to their problems. And they don't buy your software because you can cover thousands of other problems. They only care for their problem. And therefore it has to be customizable. And there is this notion of software as a service configuration competency model. I know this is a quite complex slide, but you have this 5 levels here from entry to world class. And we decided, for instance, to go for the mature level. This means that we offer, for instance, a basic programmable environment. We made the API part of our product to enable our consulting team and our business partners to tailor the system to the needs of a specific customer. We offer, for instance, scripting-based programming for very flexible customizations. And this is a very important point for us, because from an end-user perspective, this is what they are heading for, a software that suits their needs and not something that can handle thousands of other customers.
Right. And you have to be able to do this and offer it in the cloud on a multi-tenant basis.
Yeah, and what changes here is that you have to be aware that you're programming in a kind of meta model, because you have to think of not only what do I want to offer as a functionality, but what do I want to enable my partners, power users, consultants, make out of the software. So you have to build a kind of development environment, a mature scripting environment. So it changes from programmability to some kind of metadata management customizability. We always call it a software factory. We just deliver, and I wanted to show that in the next slide here. We build just the atoms, if you want. And then we have, for instance, we build a base model out of these atoms, and then we have partners, business partners, consulting team, power users.
Customize the small pieces.
Exactly, so that the end user, who's in our case just wants to do some time tracking, feels comfortable with this solution, because he doesn't find, I don't know, hundreds of unnecessary fields. He finds exactly what he's needing.
But you can also add fields, you can add calculations,
Absolutely.
you can
Business
define
rules.
basic logic to go through
Exactly,
and do processing.
and change, for instance, the permission model and things like that. So it really fits to the custom needs. Well, to be honest, I mean, you are the best in class at Microsoft. Think of SharePoint, think of Dynamics CRM. You can do that, but these are really quite expensive products, and we wanted to build something that is able to do something similar. We don't go so far, we are not Microsoft, of course, but we wanted to offer something similar for a very low pricing point so that everyone can afford it.
So where does that leave us? What should we walk away with today, thinking about multi-tenancy, if it makes sense for our applications, what it means, talking about our customers?
I want to leave you with 3 important points. First one, cloud computing enables people. It enables us as ISVs, but it also will lead to more competition, because the entry barrier for building a solution has been lowered. The cloud has leveled the playing field. You don't need a lot of money to build a very innovative and cool new solution, and you're standing on the shoulder of giants because you have a big data center, and I can work in a data center that is world class. And 3 or 4 years ago, that was not possible. I had to have a lot of money to start. That's the first thing. So it is an enabler, but not only for us, but also for competition. The second one is, it's not easy, but the complexity is not multi-tenancy alone. It's not customization alone. It's the combination of multi-tenancy plus customization. Many tenants living in one environment, but every tenant wants to have his customized environment. Bringing this together is not the easiest thing on earth. And the last one, many people underestimate this stuff. The business plan has to be ready.
Right.
Because
we're talking about channel change,
Yeah.
pricing changes, acquisition, billing, all of those things change for the
Absolutely.
customer.
There is this famous saying of IKEA. They say, we design the price tag first. And this is exactly what we have to do. When we designed Time Cockpit, we defined the price per user per month before we decided about our software architecture. Because some pieces we really wanted to use from Windows Azure, for instance, we couldn't afford them 2 years ago because it doesn't fit into our pricing point. So we started the development in Excel, but not doing some macros, but doing some calculations, and then we have built the architecture of the software. The technology will follow. If you have your business plan and your maths ready, then everything will work out fine.
Brilliant. Rainer, thanks for coming to join us today. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
sharing
Chris.
your experience with
Thank you.
software architects and
Yeah.
talking to us a little about multi-tenancy.
And if you want to give it a try, Time Cockpit, of course, check it out. It's a cool new solution.
Right. Thank you.
Chris. Bye.